Hello, I'm Kylie Munnich, CEO of Screen Queensland, and it's my absolute pleasure to be speaking today to Madeline di Nonno, who is the CEO for the Geena Davis Institute on Gender in Media. And Madeline is with me today to speak about a screening that we are hosting in collaboration with WOW, Women of the World Festival, in Brisbane, of their groundbreaking documentary, This Changes Everything. Hello, Madeline, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Kylie. And I almost made it to Australia this year to be with you and WOW. And I was fortunate that at least in the last few years, I've been able to come out and see you. So greetings to everyone at home.
Thank you, Madeline. We were so disappointed, like so many people, that the WOW Festival was postponed this year. We're looking forward to something bigger and better next year. Of course, we all know the reasons why, but it doesn't stop the fight for equality of gender in media, and the Geena Davis Institute does such amazing work in that space. I'd love to hear a bit more from you about the film This Changes Everything. It was released in 2019. I'd love to know what impact you think the film has had and maybe what changes that you're seeing in the industry, in the screen industry, since you released that film.
We had been working on that film, which was directed by Tom Donahue and produced by Ian Arboleta and a number of other people, including Geena and myself. And we've been working on the film for a number of years, and there were a lot of movements that started happening and actions that happened. So while we were in the thick of production, the Weinstein sexual assault case happened. And then we had the election, happen. And then, a number of things. So while we were in production, and then Me Too happened. And it was very important that we embraced the time and the movement and into the film, which thank goodness we were able to. And I will say, I do want to give a shout out to Anita Hill and the Hollywood Commission, because she just published a report on kind of the impact of Me Too and kind of where things are. And in doing a survey, 70% of respondents said that they felt that there was moderate progress since Me Too launched. 62% of that was female, 80% of that, was male. But in doing their survey, 1 in 5 females have had unwanted, sexual attention versus 1 in 10, for males. So we have a long way to go. So that's in terms of, I would say, workplace safety, right? And there's been a lot instituted around that. When we think about what have been the changes, on screen, we've been very fortunate in the last 2 years to achieve 2 of our primary mission goals. One was achieving gender parity for female lead characters in family films, and then achieving gender parity for female leads in family television, so the top rated kids TV. But when it comes to LGBTQ plus and race and disabilities and a number of other things, we're really far behind, and we look at it from an intersectional lens. But on a positive note, in terms of film and TV, there's a demand for diverse content. So clearly, streaming has gone up 65%. Our children, I could speak for US children, are spending almost 2 hours a day engaging with screen times. Parents are like, yes, I know, but it's COVID. What are we going to do? It's just going to happen. And if you talk to kids who are 13 to 17, they're like, yeah, 3/4 of my working day is spent on media. And this is not even including homework. Homework is on top of it. But there is a demand for diverse content, kids content in the TV sphere. According to Parrot analysis, that's gone up 58% versus overall 40%. And in film, we recently conducted a study with Movio, who I'm sure anyone who's a filmmaker here is familiar with. They're the largest analytics company for the theatrical industry. And what we found is that when we looked at the juxtaposition of diverse characters on screen and the audience, there's a direct correlation. But the concern is that even though the audience may be split male-female, when you look at, race and other things, we're not showing our children our rich cultures, right? So over 50% of the characters are still white, regardless of the genre. And so what does that say about a family, whether it's people of color, indigenous, mixed race, that want to take their children to see family films? Their children are seeing a mostly white, audience. And again, heterosexual, et cetera, et cetera. So we do really, as much as there is some progress, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done.
I think you give some really powerful statistics there that indicate just how far we have to go. Any progress is good progress, but it still feels like we're inching forward. I think something that's very visible is the fact that there's only ever been one female director, Catherine Bigelow, to win an Academy Award in the very long history of the Academy Awards. So it certainly feels like we still need a long way to go for really visible creative roles for women in film and television making. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And the thing is, everyone knows what the behind the camera numbers are. They've known since the beginning of the film industry. Whereas until, in all honesty, Geena really pointed it out, back in 2004, no one really understood about the unconscious bias that was happening on screen. We believe that what's happening behind the camera is conscious bias, because you're talking about hiring. But when it comes to depictions on screen, people really weren't aware of that. And if you think about, if most of the storytellers are male, they're going to write stories that they know and they love. And therefore, it may be bereft of female presence, versus if there is a female writer or director, we know it's a 10% increase automatically in on-screen roles. So there's a direct correlation between who's telling the story, who's crafting the story, and what winds up on screen.
We value diversity and inclusivity at Screen Queensland. It is foundational to what we do in terms of building the industry here. And we know that we need to make more space and make more opportunities to ensure that our storytelling is diverse. So I'm interested really to know, since the film has been released, and we haven't seen it yet in Queensland, but since the film has been released, have you reflected on it and thought, is there something you would do differently now? I mean, hindsight is an amazing thing, and now the industry, like the whole world, is suffering through this pandemic. Is there something that you feel needs to be brought to light since that film has come out that really just amplifies the story of that film?
Well, the thing is, the film could go on and on. So the thought is, is a film, but should we have rolled out a series to go with it? Because there's so much that keeps happening, and that I believe the story can go on clearly. So I would say that that we could have had the film and then right away gone into some type of, docuseries. And there were so many people who just weren't available. We couldn't get a hold of them. Think about, if we made the film now, we would have had everybody, because everybody was home. So it's almost like it could have been a COVID-friendly film. So that was the thing. There's so many people that we reached out to that just couldn't make it into the film, which we wish we could have included.
You have some very big names on the screen, who are absolutely telling their truth. And I also know that in the credits, that 75% of the crew working on the film is female. That's right, isn't it?
That's right. And then in addition to that, the filmmakers made sure we created opportunities for not only women, but other marginalized communities. So there were a number of people who were also shadowing the people who were driving the production, so that we could, teach them the art of the craft as well.
It's very important to give a platform to the next generation of storytellers and filmmakers to ensure that diversity in the future. How do we keep these voices for change and gender equality There's so many issues facing the world at the moment, not least the pandemic. How does the Geena Davis Institute keep rattling the cage and keep those voices loud for gender and diverse equality?
Well, being a research-driven advocacy group, we have seen a dramatic change in the way that leading content creators are organizing themselves. And so when you look at the diversity, equity, inclusion functionality that used to sit kind of over in HR, human resources, and we've seen all of these esteemed executives be moved into the business units and much closer to content. So yes, it's all about workplace safety and hiring and promotion and measuring. But when it comes to external messaging and the content, we see enterprise level executives and then business unit executives being placed in all of the major content creators around the world that are influencing and have the opportunity to influence and reinforce what they learn from us in our research, either because it's one of our CJane 2020 studies or we're doing much more commissioned work behind the scenes, because we have two primary tools we use. One is I'd say pre-production, which is called spell check for bias, which can work off of text and scripts. And the other one is called the Geena Davis Inclusion Quotient, which is more of an auditing tool because it works off of video and audio. And I'd say all the majors are working with us to use these tools to see, well, how do we do? And also to look at how do we prevent, how can we be more preventative so that then we're not fixing something on the back end that we could have fixed on the front end, and we're not having something maybe happen that we're not aware of that then could come back. There could be some kind of backlash. And, across the board, everyone is digging in a way that is very authentic, and also, I believe, in a way that can be measured. And I think, for us to hopefully be together having this conversation a year from now, there has to be measurement. And the other thing is, what I think you have done very well, and I think have been ahead of the game is, there's the opportunity for funding. I mean, you have some funding models that we don't have in the US, and you have put your money where your mouth is. And that is kind of the key. There's yourselves, there's the British Film Institute, there's very few entities, film media entities around the world that are making sure they're allocating some funding towards other marginalized, communities that wouldn't be able to get their first film made, versus their second or third. So I think that's great. And I also see more depth in terms of the programs that we do have in the US, which sit within all the major studios and content creators, where their directors are getting hired for jobs. The writers are getting placed. And so we just need a few years for that talent pool and that pipeline, to also, bubble up. So those are some of the things that we I definitely see changing.
Obviously, research and data is critical in demonstrating what the problem is and how to fix the problem. So to come from that place, is that's so important when you're trying to instruct an industry why you need to change. And it's clear that these are systemic problems, not just in the US, but everywhere in Australia and in every media. So I think we're very grateful to the Institute for continuing to shout about this and find the resources to indicate what we all need to be made aware of. It's hard not to acknowledge what's going on in the US in terms of both gender issues, racism issues, and the media. You are about to have a change in president. You have an incoming president-elect, and probably even more excitingly, an incoming vice president-elect who is a woman. How do you see 2021 being different for the media in particular in the US?
Well, I think it'll be a new story for them to tell. So that'll be great. And I think we can retire will we ever see a woman in the White House in office? So we can retire all of that and all of those storylines. Also a woman who is diverse as well. So it's a sigh of relief and very joyful. But I think it will be, very impactful, and it'll be interesting to see how that influences our narrative. I mean, I think about it was back in, I think, the early 2000s when Geena played the first ever fictional female president of the United States on TV and in Commander-in-Chief. And now it's just so exciting to see that almost becoming a reality, but, having such a powerful leader in Kamala Harris, and of course with Joe Biden, it'll be very interesting to see what happens in terms of how that plays out in narrative. So we're very excited.
Looking from afar, I probably speak only for myself, but I'm sure there are others who are looking forward to the discourse and the national conversation becoming more uplifting next year.
Amen to that.
Well, look, I could talk to you all day, Madeline. I perhaps will just close with what can people expect in Brisbane who are coming to see this film in a couple of weeks' time? What can you say about This Changes Everything and why it's such an important message?
Well, I think it unpacks a systemic discrimination in terms of what was happening behind the camera, what's been happening on camera, and some of the stereotypes that are being perpetuated. And I would like to say, within the next few years that film is so outdated because everything has changed. And isn't that quaint? That would be ideal to say, way back when, that would be the best.
Well, look, we're so grateful that the Institute exists, first of all, for the powerful work you're doing, the advocacy, that the film was made and that we will get the chance to see it as part of the Screen Queensland and WOW screening. Very grateful for your time today. And we also look forward to welcoming you back to Australia one day in the future. And wish you all the best. Thank you, Madeline.
Thank you so much, Kylie.